burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gently into that good night. Good men, last wave by and bright. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the US Optics TS-1-6. But before we get into that, if you'd like to help out the channel, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, as all that sort of stuff is free. And on top of that, comment literally anything down below, and you will make the YouTube algorithm just a little bit happier. Now, on top of that, I also have a subscribe star, which is basically just a pro to a Patreon. You send me a couple bucks every month, I get you entered in some pretty cool giveaways, and of course, send you some extra content. Now, full disclosure on this optic, this is of course the US Optics TS-1-6. This is the second focal plane model with the very simple duplex style reticle where it just has, I believe it's a 3 MOA center dot. That is the only thing in the reticle, and that's the only thing that gets illuminated. Now, I got this optic from Solaris Group. Now, Solaris Group was kind enough to reach out to me, and basically they are a website that carries a wide variety of products within the industry, and they wanted to send some stuff out for me to test and of course give them a shout out in return for products at cost. So I did pay for this optic. However, I got this optic for cost from Solaris Group. So if you're interested in any of those products within the industry, go ahead and check out Solaris Group. I'll leave a link to them in the description and on screen. Again, they just carry a wide variety of products that we as gun enthusiasts are interested in. Now, getting into some of the more boring specifications, this is of course a 1-6 model, second focal plane with, again, that boring duplex reticle, which is very, very simple. The MSRP is going to be the big downside. The MSRP on this optic is $595, and yes, this optic is in fact made in China, like a lot of other optics that cost far less money. Now, the body is your very standard 6061 aluminum. It is hard coat anodized. It's quite nice. The finish looks good, all that sort of stuff. It is going to be in half MOA increments on the turrets, which are capped. The top battery cap or the side battery cap comes with a extra slot where you can store an extra 2032 if you so desire. It doesn't come with an extra 2032, but there is again a place to store another one. The illumination, it has 6 illumination settings, no night vision settings, though again, you're probably not going to be using that anyways. And there is an off in between each setting, which I quite like, so you don't need to cycle through all the settings. You just go next to the one that you want and then just flip it either direction to get to your desired brightness setting. Now, size and weight on the TS-6 is actually going to be one of its strong suits, as it is only about 10.5 inches long and 17.9 ounces. So in terms of size and weight, it's definitely not the biggest on the market, and it is actually towards the lower end or the lighter end of the weight spectrum. The lightest 1-6 on the market is like 14, 15 ounces, and this one here is 17.9 or 18 ounces. And then the heavier ones go all the way up to 22 to 28 ounces for some of the very, very chunky boys. Now, the Magnification throw ring is very nice. It's very smooth. It's a 180-degree throw, which is quite nice. It does have a little raised knob which kind of makes it more difficult to put on like an aftermarket throw lever, and it doesn't come with one. There's no integrated throw lever, just a little bit of a knob. Not a big deal, but if you are trying to transition from 1 to 6X very quickly, you're gonna have to use a little bit of technique, or just get a little bit, or get very, very familiar with it, I should say. Now, I alleviated that issue by putting it in a worn ramp 30 with an offset red dot. So basically whatever magnification I have it at, I still have a very fast 1X if I need it. Now let's go ahead and talk about the eye relief and the eye box. Now the eye relief on the optic is quite good. It's fairly standard for most LPVOs. You get about 3.5 inches on the low end, but you can easily stretch that back to 6 or 7 inches in a pinch if you need it. And then of course, as you rack up in magnification, it gets a little bit tighter, down to about 3 to 3.5 inches. So again, for an LPVO, it's very, very nice. Now on 1X, you do have a very forgiving eye box. Basically left, right, up and down, maybe an inch or so in total play, up, down, left, and right, which again on 1X is actually quite good. So the eye relief, the eye box, all that sort of stuff is quite nice, but again, it is comparable to most other LPVOs. It's nothing special, I would say, but it is, again, it's good. The field of view on the optic is, I believe, at 1X, it's 108 feet at 100 yards, which is pretty good. Anything over 100 is good. Anything over 110 is excellent. So it's not quite excellent, but it's definitely very good. I have seen much higher in other optics. For instance, the Swamp Fox Arrowhead 1:8 has a field of view of 122 feet at 100 yards versus 108 feet. However, this is more than adequate. I would consider the field of view on it very good. And again, at 1X with both eyes open, you're never really going to notice it. But again, at higher magnifications, that really starts to pay off when you can actually get more information through the glass without having to move the optic around. Now, on top of the decent field of view, the optic also has pretty decent glass. It is a Chinesium optic. It is Chinesium glass. However, I do want to say that it edges out most other Chinesium optics by just the smallest amount. It's just the tiniest bit more bright, the tiniest bit more crisp. No, it's not going to compare anything like the Vortex, the Viper PST Gen 2, but again, other Chinesium style optics, it's going to barely beat them out, and I mean barely beat them out. So it is slightly better. That might just be from the certain prescription and the erector sets that are in here being slightly more efficient. So if you have crappy Chinese glass and you stack a lot of it, you're going to get obviously more optical degradation, but they might be using a more, again, more efficient setup of the actual glass, which is why it's also lightweight, 17.9 ounces. And so it might allow them to get a little bit more bright, a little bit more crisp of an image. However, again, still for the $600, it's not particularly great, though it is going to edge out some other cheaper optics. So the eye box, eye relief on the optic is good, the field of view is very good, and the glass is slightly better than some other optics in a lower price category. However, the reticle kind of makes all of that fall flat on its face. As I mentioned earlier, the reticle is an incredibly simple duplex reticle. It is fairly nicely illuminated, though it is not daylight bright, just like all other low tier optics other than the Vortex Viper PST Gen 2. At max brightness, it starts to wash out the image a little bit because they put in a very, very powerful illuminator. However, it still doesn't really contend with full daylight bright all that well. So the reticle that they have, while it is definitely usable, I have used this out to 400 yards with, again, just basically Kentucky windage without issue whatsoever on this 16-inch BCA rifle that they sent out to me. That was a hit. Recording that? Mm-hmm. Sweet. All right. One more. Just off to the right. Yeah. Sweet. I have been able to use it just fine. It is very fast up close. It's very easy to use. However, it has a lot less built-in capability than basically every other reticle on the market. The Vortex Strike Eagle Gen 2 has a very, very good BDC reticle that I've made first round hits out to 550 yards using their reticle, something that is just not possible whatsoever with this optic, as I would have to be, again, just holding into blank space. Inside of 300 yards, I don't think it matters at all. I think that whatever you point at with this 5.56 rifle with the 0 that I have on it, you're going to hit inside of 300 yards. However, for 500-600 yards, where maybe you want to do more shooting, this optic is going to start to fall behind very, very quickly. So again, it depends on your use case scenario. If you're all inside of 100, 200 yards, even 300 yards, but you just want that extra magnification to get a little bit better positive ID, or you just want, it makes it easier for you to take shots, whatever your reason is, it's going to be fine inside of 300 yards. However, as you start to stretch beyond that, that's really where the problems start to arise. And again, the issue is literally every other scope on the market, even if it has just a simple MOA ladder reticle, like again the Vortex Viper has a very, very simple MOA ladder reticle, but again it also has perfect illumination in the center, and the glass is better on it as well, and the field of view is better, and some other things as well. This optic just doesn't even have that. So again, at longer ranges, even if you're just target shooting out to 400, 500, 600 yards, this is going to be still doable, obviously, because you can do it with a red dot, and this obviously has magnification, so it's going to be easier than that, but it is going to be more difficult than it should be if it just had even the simplest of ladder reticles with the center dot. Now, before we get into my opinions on this optic's price to performance, which I bet most of you guys already know how that is going to go, let's go ahead and talk about the testing and how it performed in some of my very basic tests. So in terms of round count, we're at around 700-800 rounds of 5.56 on 4 or 5 different guns. Performed very well on each one. No noticeable shift in 0 whatsoever. On top of that, I have done some night shooting with it with a Olight Odin Turbo, which is a terrible light, but I did use it on there and it was just fine. The glass again is slightly brighter than some other cheaper optics. That makes it a little bit easier to use at night with white light, just because you're getting better light transmission, that sort of thing. Also, I have about 300 or 400 rounds of this optic on 308, so in terms of total round count, we are well over 1,000 rounds of 5.56 and 308. And then on top of that, every optic that I test gets a double drop test. Now, I don't always mention this, but I should. The mount that I tested the double drop test in is this Warn Ramp 30. They did send this out to me, but I do really like the mount, and you guys will see that it performs exceptionally well. So the 2 cross bolts are mounted at 65 inch-pounds, which is very tight, and then all 8 of the top screws are torqued down sequentially to 25 inch-pounds each. Basically, that means that you use a crisscross pattern and then you go back over it after you're done, and it really does lock the optic in place. So I do the same double drop test with every optic, or basically every optic that I test. So it's 2 drops from shoulder height. Now, before that, you of course fire a 5-round control group. The control group that I shot was at 50 yards using some 68 grain Federal Hornady, or Frontier Hornady, I should say, 68 grain boat tail hollow point match ammunition, which is not match ammunition. It's really terrible ammunition. But I did the 5-round control group. Then I went ahead and did the double drop test, one on the top of the optic, one on the side of the optic from shoulder height onto dirt and rocks. The place where I shoot is basically 100% rock, and then there's like a little bit of like dirt and grass grown up over top. And then after the drops, you do again another 5-round group. Now, I maintained the same point of aim for both groups, and again at 50 yards, 10 rounds, I basically stacked, with a couple flyers, stacked all 10 rounds in about 1.5 inches. So 0 was definitely maintained on the optic. So in terms of its holding 0 and its performance, at least within this mount, which is the mount that I've used it in the most time. I've also used it in a couple other mounts, but most of the time I try and keep my nice high quality optics in the worn mounts, because I know that the worn mounts are going to hold 0. So this optic passed the double drop test with flying colors. It passed all of the ammunition tests. It performed really well in odd positions and that sort of thing. Again, the eye box and eye relief on it is quite good. However, now we get to get into the price to performance. So this is a $600 optic. Now, the MSRP on the Vortex Viper PST Gen 2 is like $899. However, street price is actually like $450 to $600 most of the time. Sometimes you can get them with a mount for like $550, a worn mount actually, now that I think about it, for about $550 from like Brownells and places like that. This one here, I paid my own money from. I got it from Bowtac, and I got it for $430 on sale. Now, similar with the US optics, usually you can find them street price for anywhere from $400 to $500, maybe a little bit less in some circumstances. But when you compare these guys head to head, the Viper wins in every category except for one, and that is going to be size and weight. This is a little bit more of a chunky boy. I think it weighs like 22 ounces, 23 ounces, something like that. But the glass on it is noticeably better. It has a wider field of view at 112 feet. The 1X performance is much better, and the illumination is also more than daylight bright. It also has an MOA ladder reticle and a more precise aiming point in the center as well. So in every category other than weight, this optic is 100% better. And the problem that I have with this optic is that it doesn't even compete with lower optics all that well. For instance, this does have better glass than the Vortex Strike Eagles, but the reticles and the Strike Eagles and the illumination is better, and they're about the same size and weight, honestly, but they're about $100, $200 cheaper. And again, the reticle allows you to stretch them out much easier than this optic. So this is going to be a very mixed bag in terms of price to performance, because in terms of performance, it's pretty darn good inside of 300 yards. It does have slightly better glass, like I mentioned before. The reticle does work inside of 300 yards when you don't need any sort of holdovers, or you don't need to hold for wind or anything else like that. So when you don't need a reticle, it does a fine job. However, any of those, again, extended range circumstances, is going to fall well behind. Now, the problem with that is that even though it does perform well, it costs about twice as much as most of your other sort of budget end optics, the Strike Eagles, the Bushnell ARs, the Black Hounds, the Swamp Fox Arrowheads, the Swamp Fox Tomahawks as well as other scopes from like Burris and a host of other manufacturers in that same price category. So while I do think that it honestly performs well, I think it does get crushed in price to performance, which is what matters to most of us who actually have to spend our own money on stuff. And again, I got this for a diminished price, and I still wouldn't use it over some of the other optics that I've mentioned. Now again, I don't want to be too mean to the optic. I do want to give it props for holding basically a perfect 0 after a double drop test and having no issues whatsoever after getting submerged and dropped and all that other sort of fun stuff. 1200 rounds of 5.56 and 308, no issues whatsoever. So I think if you have this optic and you really like it, it fits your use case scenario, you should still be very happy with it. However, if you're in the market for one of these optics or for a similarly priced optic, I think you can do a lot better for the money. Now, I don't want this to be the final word on US optics for me. I think I am going to get one of their 1:6 or 1:8 in their first focal plane that have a much better reticle, and see if those kind of live up to more of the hype that this optic should have. Now, US optics is most famous for their top tier, like custom line of optics, which are very highly renowned. However, their more entry line, at least their first iteration of their entry line scopes, leave a lot to be desired. So that is about it for the video, guys. I do want to thank Solaris Group once again for getting me this and some other stuff that we're going to be testing soon at cost, which again just allows me to do more shooting and to spend that money on other stuff related to the project. So once again, go ahead and check them out. That is Solaris Group. There's going to be a link on screen and in the description. But that's about it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think of this optic down in the comments down below. And that's about it for the video, guys. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace off.